Today we look at the point-and-click mystery adventure Crowns and Pawns Kingdom of Deceit, which mostly takes place in Lithuania.
Where now?
Yeah, even some characters in the game don't know what or where that is. That East European country shares a border with Poland, Belarus, Latvia, and Kaliningrad, and it's the home country of the indiedev-studio Tag of Joy, who made the point-and-click adventure Crowns and Pawns. I got the chance to talk to one of the founders, Šarūnas Ledas, and he told me why they chose point-and-click, why they work together with a historian, and how Lithuania is like for indies. Now on Open Indie. Šarūnas, nice to have you here on the show.
Nice being here.
I'm really flashed from your game Crowns and Pawns Kingdom of Deceit. That's your new game, which came out this month, May 2022. It's a point-and-click mystery adventure, and I really like this kind of genre. And it's also a classic genre, so it didn't surprise me when I've read that you guys are really fans of such classic adventures, like also Monkey Island and Broken Sword. And I've read that some features of these games have inspired you while making your new game, Crowns and Pawns. Apart from them also being point-and-click adventures, how did they inspire you?
The company, Tag of Joy, was founded by myself and my brother. And so we started playing the same games at some point when we were teenagers. And we kind of pretty quickly discovered adventure games. And so obviously they had a big influence on us, even our personalities, but also our professional life and the games that we played later or we wanted to make in the future. So I guess the games in that genre inspired us in general, and of course they had a big influence on Crowns and Pawns. But I would say that specifically Broken Sword was one of the most influential games for this title, because it has a lot of similarities in its narrative, in its storytelling, in its setting, because it's Crowns and Pawns. I can briefly tell you about the story itself. So it starts with Milda, a girl from Chicago, where she unexpectedly gets a letter that says that her grandfather has died and she has inherited his house somewhere in Lithuania because her parents are from there and grandparents as well. So she kind of wants to go there and see what she got and maybe sell it and get some money. But then she comes to Lithuania and she sees that someone was looking for something at the house. And then she discovers that some bad guys are after something and she starts digging into it. She goes to various historical places like churches, museums, stuff like that, and finds some clues, solves some puzzles, travels around Europe a little bit, and then she may or may not find some historical relic or artifact at the end of the game. So yes, that story is, I guess the storytelling is quite a lot, quite similar to Broken Sword, because it also has real places, but also some fictional places and real historical facts, but also some fiction on top and some mystery on top. And we did something very similar. As for other games, like, I know Monkey Island is obviously a comedic game, but I do think that it has inspired us a bit, and we did put some comedic lines in the game, even though the game is more on the serious side, but the dialogues have some humor. And our writer was definitely inspired by those comedic point-and-click adventures as well. So So yeah, I guess every game that we played inspired us a little bit and ended up in this game one way or another. But also on top of that, we tried to innovate the genre a little bit and add some bits and pieces that haven't been done before or haven't been done before that often.
Okay, which ones?
So one of the more interesting ones is that you can change the appearance of your character, which is not very, very often in point-and-click adventures. And at first we thought that it's a fun feature, but we're a little bit afraid that people won't like it. But we just went for it, said that let's just base some puzzles on that feature and let's let players have fun with that feature. And when the game went out, we noticed that some players actually say that they didn't know that they wanted this feature before they actually played this game.
Me too, I must say. I have to say, really, it's something where when I read it that you can change your clothes, I was like, okay, is that so important? Well, for some puzzles, it actually is. But still, I really had much fun with this. Always, when I went by the wardrobe, I always changed my clothes to look different.
Well, I guess that's something that quite a lot of players did with the game, and we're very happy that it ended up being a fun feature. But also, as I mentioned and as you've mentioned, it's also used for puzzles in a few places in the game. So it's not for fun. So it has like two birds with one stone feature.
What actually is your favorite scene in the game in Crowns and Pawns? And if you could describe it, would be great.
My personal favorite.
Mm?
How much can I spoil?
Oh, maybe not too much, just in case people haven't played it yet.
Okay. Well, my favorite is probably a certain church that you visit late in the game in nighttime. So I guess for the players that haven't played it, I haven't spoiled too much, but for the ones who did, I guess they will probably know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So it's for me it looks quite epic, and I personally liked how the artist solved the atmosphere because as I mentioned, it's in nighttime, so it's quite atmospheric and has high contrast and stuff like that. So I kind of always like entering that place and seeing it for the first time. Well, not for the first time, obviously, but I feel like I'm seeing it for the first time every time I go there, which I love. But I would say that there's a lot of cool scenes in the game, and that's actually one thing that we did with this game is we didn't have a lot of scenes. It's not like a huge world to explore, but we tried to make every scene count. We tried to make every scene pretty. We tried to put puzzles in every scene, to add characters and things to do in every scene. So I would say that every environment, every room that you enter, for me has its own charm and has its own something unique that you can see in every scene. So I wouldn't like emphasize any of the specific scene, because I think we kind of try to make every one of them interesting.
The story mostly takes place in Lithuania, where you guys are also from.
Yes.
And before you've said that some things in the game are fiction, like I don't think Milda exists, right?
Yes. Yes, she doesn't.
But some things are also real. What's fake and what's not?
Well, the characters are mostly fake or like fictional, although there is one sports fan here in Lithuania that inspired us to add the sports fan in the game. So that one is quite closely based on a real person, but it's obviously the name and even the looks are different from reality. But other than that, the characters are not like based on real people, but they're based on some, I don't know, some stereotypes that we have here in Lithuania, or some features that we wanted to express and show in the game to the players. So they're fictional, but they're based on reality one way or another. And then the places, a lot of the places are actually real. So the places that you visit here in Lithuania, Vilnius University, then the streets in the old town, they are real. Then the Chicago square that you visit in the beginning of the game is obviously the real deal. There are a few real places in one of the other countries that you visit. I don't want to spoil, but there's a couple other countries that you visit in the game. So they have some real places as well. But there's also quite a few fictional ones, like most of the apartments that you go into in the game are fake.
So it's not your own apartment.
No, it's not. I don't live in Chicago.
Okay,
But,
it's true.
but yeah, but the apartments here in Vilnius in Lithuania, they are also not real. We just wanted to put them in those specific places in the city, or make them look in a specific way. So they're not real. Some of the places that you see towards the end of the game, they are also fictionalized heavily or completely fictionalized. So, but I guess I assume the players kind of make the distinction there, because it's towards the end of the game, it's quite obvious which places are real and which ones aren't. Most of them are still based on research. They're based on even though they're not there in the real world. You could read something like that in some of the historical texts or something. So we had some creative liberties there, but we tried to kind of add something real even in the fictionalized location.
It's so great that you show something from your country and from the capital Vilnius. That's for me so great playing this game and getting to know a bit of Lithuania, especially if you don't know much about it, like me. It's so cool to kind of visit the country and the city. And also to see the University of Vilnius. And although I'm not religious, I was fascinated by these old and really colorful churches where you have to solve some puzzles, and you really drew them like they are in real life, right?
Well, we tried to capture the beautiful details that are there, but we also kind of romanticize them a little bit. The game is also not completely realistic. It has a little bit of cartoon in it, so we stylized them a little bit, and as I mentioned, we added a lot of sunny atmosphere in the daytime scenes, and then the nighttime scenes are also kind of saturated, I would say, but just to make them I don't know, more romantic and more interesting to visit.
Okay, I see.
Actually, the details of the churches, of the streets, of other places, they are pretty accurate, which our main artist wasn't very happy about that, because there's a lot of details in some of the places.
But why wasn't he happy?
Because it's just a lot of work to actually draw every ornament in a church or every detail of every building in the street.
Okay.
It's sometimes easier to draw something like from a fantasy game where you can just add random details and they look good. Of course, they have to be convincing, but they're still more random than a real place. So it was quite a lot of work. I mean, everybody's happy with the result, but in the process, there was some swearing, I suppose.
Was it also a lot of work with all these historical facts? Of course, there are some in the game. Like there's also, I would say, one of the main focuses, like focusing on historical facts. Like the main character Milda, she discovers the story about a Lithuanian king who was never crowned because he died before the crown could reach him. That's a true story, I heard. So did you kind of work together with a historian for the game, or I don't know, did you read a lot of history books, or how did you do it?
We did do a lot of research, but so in the very beginning, when we started looking for something interesting to talk about in the game like this, we looked into some stories and books here in Lithuania, and we found one author. She's also kind of a historian. She does guided tours and stuff like that, but also writes books about that. So we contacted her, and she helped us with the initial kind of set of facts for the story of this game, which was pretty neat and pretty helpful and useful to start with. But then our writer and the rest of the team collectively took over, and we did a lot of research over the years and read a lot of sources, starting with books, finishing with Wikipedia, which doesn't have a lot of facts about Lithuania, but sometimes you discover interesting things that people write there, specific details that you wouldn't find elsewhere. So there was a lot of research involved, and most of the historical facts that we mentioned in the game, they are real, true facts. But we also did some speculation in between. Like, I don't want to spoil too much, but there are some objects that we talk about in the game or show them in the game, and nobody knows where they are or how exactly they looked or whatever.
Okay.
But we did some speculation from what historians think that could have happened or how they could have looked. Some pictures of I don't know, paintings and stuff where it could be accurate or it could not be accurate, but you have to trust something. So there were some like things or facts fictionalized and like interpolated between the real facts, and obviously the main idea is like it's a bit fantasized because it's a mystery game. There's some fantasy, some I know I would even say magic involved, but which is obviously not that realistic. But there are sources that say that these facts could have been true.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I really liked that to not only see something of Lithuania, but also discover like some history of the country. So that was pretty cool.
We do see a lot of movies and play a lot of games that take place in the, so to say, regular places in the world. And we see a lot of, I don't know, Eiffel Tower or the Statue of Liberty or places like that. But we don't hear a lot about smaller places that also have really interesting histories and really interesting places to visit and so on. So I really like the fact that more and more, especially indie developers, are trying to kind of show their own home countries and things like that. That, for example, did you know that Firewatch is based on a real place that one of the creators grew up in?
Oh no, I didn't know that. Really? I thought it's fake. Okay.
Many of it could be fake, but there's still a place like that in somewhere in Wyoming, and one of the two lead creators of Firewatch grew up there. At least that's what I read. And then there's other games like even the point and click genre, like for example, Gibbous, which you probably know. They used some locations from Transylvania, which is the place they are from. And then there's Saint Kotar, a game that's based on Croatia. And so yeah, there's quite a few games like that actually show the countries where the developers are from. And I think it's really interesting because it's exotic to the rest of the world, but there's still interesting places and facts and stories that you can tell there.
Also typical for point-and-click adventures, you have to solve a lot of puzzles. And I really love doing that. But still, here and there are many situations where I'm just desperate. And that also happened in Crowns and Pawns, I have to say. I haven't read any walkthroughs yet, so that's something I really want to pull through by myself. But yeah, I thought some puzzles are really quite hard for me. Like, for instance, there's like this cat in the university.
Hey, kitty. Ouch, feisty.
Which sits on a table and sits on an ID card I really need. And it always bites me when I reach out for the card. In my inventory, I've got this fish bagel, and so I combined in my head, okay, cat plus fish equals ID card. But no, the cat doesn't want to eat the bagel. So that's just one of the puzzles I'm really stuck with, but I'm pretty sure I'm getting there.
With a specific cat, I can tell you that you have to do something else.
Okay.
Before the cat goes somewhere else as well.
All right.
But it's interesting actually that with some puzzles, I guess in our game, but also other games as well, is that the player can get really stuck on something, or I would even say fixated or something on something specific that they don't even need right now, but they desperately want to get it or to do it, and they try everything before trying anything else. But sometimes you just have to let go. Maybe the situation will change. So this is one of those places.
Okay, yeah, I thought maybe I have to come back later or something, but yeah, it's true that because I think I know where I have to use that ID card. So yeah, you're so close kind of to the solution, and you just really want to grab it and go on. But yeah, I think that's something for later. But I was wondering, what are other players saying? Are they also kind of struggling like me?
Throughout the development of the game, we try to make the puzzles as varied as possible. So we added spatial puzzles, we added timed puzzles, we added just regular inventory combination puzzles, we added puzzles in the environment, we added dialogue puzzles, and like all kinds of puzzles that you can find in games like this, because there are different people, they like different kinds of puzzles, and if you make all of them the same in the game, then a certain audience will love the game, but everybody else will think that it lacks something. So we try to kind of give something to everyone. And the same goes to difficulty of puzzles. We try to make some of them easier, especially in the beginning of the game, even though one time puzzle proved to be quite tough for a lot of players. But we did try to make the puzzles easier at first, then a bit more advanced when the game progresses, and then slightly easier towards the end. And I think that the balance is pretty good from what we've heard, because some people are struggling a lot. They say that this game is impossible, but there are other players that say that, well, I played this game in a few hours. I didn't get stuck anywhere.
Okay.
So there's always the spectrum of players, like really hardcore players that have played dozens or hundreds of games like this, and they won't see any issues in a game like this. But there's also more casual players that will start struggling with the first puzzle that they meet because they're not used to puzzles. We actually got some feedback from players like that. They say that it's my first point-and-click adventure, and it's pretty hard. Well, I mean that's fair, but I guess it's given, because if it's your first game in that genre, you have to learn to play a game like that. Same with, I don't know, if you play Quake or Unreal Tournament or CS:GO, it will be tough for you for the first time. So you have to learn the skills, you have to understand the genre, the mechanics, everything, and then it gets easier. So I guess there will definitely be players that will struggle more or less, but there definitely are players that don't struggle at all in our game. So I would say that the balance is probably somewhere in the middle, and that's what we aim for. And I guess that's the best you can get, because then it means that most of the players find the puzzles satisfactory. They're challenging enough, because if you make them too easy, they're just not challenging. They become boring, and you just think that they're just there for you to click through, which is not great. So you do need to have some challenge, but then what we wanted to do, the main goal in the puzzles, was to make them logical, so that when you finally solve them, or even if you look at a walkthrough, you would feel that if you, I don't know, noticed a specific hint in a dialogue, or while exploring the environment, or if you gave it more thought or something like that, then you would have figured it out. So I guess for us, it was the main goal, that the puzzles would feel logical, even if you struggled with them at first.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I also played a puzzle game where it wasn't logical at all, and even if you thought about it really hard, you would never, solved it. It's just by trial and error, and that's always that these are bad games, I think. So I think there's some kind of logic has to be, like some kind of hint, or as you said, in a dialogue, that you kind of realize what to do.
Actually, we've heard a couple of players saying that puzzles are completely random and trial and error in crowns and pawns, but but we know that those players didn't notice the hints, because we put the hints for every puzzle that we thought might be a little more difficult, or might not be intuitive for everyone in the world, because, well, everybody has different perceptions of the world and different cultural backgrounds and so on. So we try to put at least a little hint for every situation like that. And I think that if you actually explore everything, you will find hints for most of the puzzles in the game.
So many indie developers, they choose early access for their games. Some say they want to get constant player feedback, which helps them during development. Why didn't you choose early access for Crowns and Pawns?
Well, that's a good question, in a way that a lot of players, a lot of developers do use that. But I would say that for narrative games, it's not that logical to go to early access, because early access means that you have kind of a prototype, like a version that is playable, but it's not there yet. It doesn't have enough levels or enough, I don't know, balance or stuff like that. A game like this, you don't have more or less levels. You just have the game because it has the beginning and it has the end.
Okay.
And then balancing is not that easy. There's not a lot of places you can balance from user feedback. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to do a lot of user testing before the release, because there's not much you can do about it. But in general, we did want to do more beta testing before the release, but it just took us longer to actually make everything for the game. So we did do some closed testing in the last weeks before the release, and we actually did fix some not huge but some minor issues in the game. And we would have been happy to actually have, I know, 2 or 3 months of beta testing with players, having, I don't know, 50 people or so playing through the game and giving us feedback. So that would be useful, but we just didn't have enough time for that. But early access is not, I would say it's more suitable for games that have like updatable content, like I mentioned, new levels or new campaigns, or I don't know, balancing updates and stuff like that. So simulation games, strategy games, action games, all of those are, I think they can use early access much better than an adventure game.
Okay, I see. So your game studio is called Tag of Joy, which you have founded with your brother. How was it founded? How did you get the idea?
When we were at school and we started playing adventure games, mostly, and we thought that, well, this is doable if you learn the right skills, like some programming, some art, some whatever, music and stuff like that. And towards the end of school, we started talking about the idea of having a business, a company that actually makes games. And then we studied, we finished our studies, our bachelor and master degrees. And my brother was even in his PhD studies at the time that we founded the company. And we said, of course, we gained some work experience elsewhere, and then said, well, this is probably the right time to actually make that business and found that company. And we did in 2012, 10 years ago almost.
Wow, congrats. Yeah, it's amazing. Why the name Tag of Joy?
I wish I remembered specifically, but it just sounded fun because it has joy in it. And that's kind of a way that you put a smile on a person or something like that. So it sounded good. It's short, but it has some kind of an idea in it.
Yeah, and it's unique, I think.
Hopefully. I haven't seen another company called like that.
What did you do in the early stages of your studio? Like, what projects did you work on?
Well, at first we worked with mobile games quite a lot. Very early on, we actually started with augmented reality. Back then, it was not as advanced as it is now. There weren't that many frameworks that you could use to actually track the environment or objects or stuff like that. It was really innovative, and we wanted to try something out with that. We had this idea of making a Tamagotchi game in augmented reality in 2012 or so. We actually won a few awards with that prototype, and then we moved on to because that one used a marker tracking, so you had to print an image and stuff like that. But we thought that maybe something more accessible would be more interesting, so we moved on to location-based augmented reality and created Monster Buster World Invasion, which is a monster fighting and collecting game that you play outside on a map.
So that's similar to Pokemon Go or something, right?
So that is really similar to Pokemon Go.
Okay.
Basically, when we started, we actually had the idea around 2013 or so, and we did think that let's make a Pokemon game in augmented reality, and we did, obviously not with Pokemon, but with our own monsters. And then a lot of time later, around 2016, I think, Pokemon Go was released with the same idea. And we were happy and sad at the same time because they made augmented reality games mainstream.
Yeah.
And like 2 months before Pokemon Go was released, we had quite a lot of skepticism that who is playing your game going outside? Nobody likes that. Everybody just likes to sit on the couch. And we told them we have a lot of players, a lot of people love that, families love that because parents can go outside with their kids and play a game there. And then Pokemon Go was released, and people changed their minds.
But that's amazing. So Monster Buster was in stores before Pokemon Go?
Obviously, it wasn't as popular because we didn't have the brand and all the marketing budget that they did. But Monster Buster was the first game like that on the market, and we were quite proud of it.
Yeah, that's your idea, actually.
But yeah, actually, it was a big project, and we released it. And yeah, over the years, the mobile market actually changed a lot because a lot of ad-based games started getting more popular because people just like free stuff and they don't mind watching an ad once in a while. But we wanted to create something that would have. I don't want to. I don't want to say more value, but more value in the thing that you actually get from the store. Because the free games you have to grind a lot, or you have to buy additional content, in-app purchases, or watch ads to get more stuff more quickly. And we just wanted to make something that people would buy once and they wouldn't have to care about all the economics of the game. So, and we were fans of the point and click genre for a lot of time. We actually knew the writer that wrote this game was our friend for I don't know how many years. Even before starting the project. So we knew that we would make a game like that eventually. It took a bit of time, but around I don't know 2016, 17, we thought that let's just focus on this and let's make a narrative game. Let's make an adventure. Let's do it for PC and consoles primarily. Maybe mobile later, but PC and consoles are the main platforms for like purchasable games, like one-time purchase games.
So Crowns and Pawns might be out for mobile too at some point?
That's possible. Probably not very soon, but it's an option. We always thought about the touch interface. And I remember probably 5 or 6 years ago, I played The Journey Down, another indie point-and-click adventure by a Swedish company. And I played one of the parts because it has 3 parts now. So I played one of the parts on an iPad, and it was great. I just loved how the interface worked. I loved how how you interact with the game, because you can play it just lying down somewhere or traveling or whatever. So back then we decided that we should probably think about the touch interface as well, even though it's really different from the mouse and keyboard interface. But we did think how it would work. We have some technical base for it, but there's still a long way before we can actually finish that and release it on mobile. And we will focus on consoles first, because we also think that these games are great playing on a couch or on a Switch if you also travel or something. So we will release it for consoles first, and then definitely consider mobile.
Okay. Is Crowns and Pawns also available for Steam Deck?
It doesn't support it like officially, but it is playable. People have mentioned that they managed to play it without any issues. So
Indie studios, they always have to look for support. Like from the episodes we've done so far, that's always one of the bigger issues. To get their name out and to look for publishers, pitch their projects, and also look for financial support somewhere. So who's supporting you at the moment?
So for Crowns and Pawns, we do have a publisher. So we talked to a lot of publishers and publishers that released adventure games before. We had quite a few partners that we wanted to work with, and one of them finally said, let's do it. And so the publisher obviously helps with marketing and with getting the game to specific platforms, because they have contacts and they have people that can adapt posters and covers for different formats and different stores. So I would say that a publisher for an indie studio is very useful. Of course, you can self-publish, but there's a lot of additional work involved there. So we are happy that we had a publisher, and they did a great job helping us out with the release, and they will keep helping us out with other releases in the future. So yeah, I think, and I don't think it's there's nothing special about it. A lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of indie developers look for help like that. Financially, I would also mention that we had some European Union support. There's this program called Creative Europe, which supports games specifically. Even The Witcher got some finances for that, even for the third part, which was already a big thing. But I mean, if they can experiment, it's a cultural game as well. They show a lot of Poland and its myths and stories. So I guess it makes sense that the EU supports projects like that. And Crowns and Pawns was also supported by the same program. And then we got a bit of money from the local government as well, because they give some support to the projects that actually get Creative Europe funding. So they co-fund those projects a little bit as well. So those funds didn't cover all the expenses. They covered maybe half of it, but it's still really good for a company like ours, because even though there is some additional paperwork involved, but I would say that it helped us a lot with making the decision to actually experiment with history facts and stories and the locations. And because at first you're not sure if the world will like it, if the world will think that, hey, something about Lithuania, is it interesting for the people, or is it just something that they don't want to hear about? So funds like that actually help take that risk. and experiment and kind of make the financial burden easier. So we're happy about that, and we try to like gather the funding from wherever we can. We do a bit of outsourcing as well, so hopefully we will focus more and more on our own original projects in the future. Now that we've released our biggest project to date. And we will continue making adventure games as well as experimenting in other genres and moving forward like that.
How is actually the situation in Lithuania for indie developers? Like, is there enough support for them, or what's the gaming industry in general like there?
I would say that it's really good for a small country like ours. We didn't have the means and the possibilities to do it when the Western countries could do it, because we didn't have access when Lithuania was in the Soviet Union. We didn't have access to the Western media, so we couldn't play a lot of the games or get the computers or a lot of other things that people in the US or the UK or Germany or anywhere else or a lot of other places in the world had access to. But with all that in mind, I think the gaming industry progressed really well. The oldest game development studio in Lithuania is already over 20 years old, I think. So, and there's quite a few other companies, indie studios as well as bigger ones. And just recently, maybe a year or two ago, Wargaming moved their headquarters here to Lithuania. So we have AAA studios now as well. Even though, like, historically, Lithuania was mostly mobile game development country. Even though at first some people try to make games for consoles and personal computers, and the oldest company that I mentioned, they also worked on Shrek games and Barbie games and games like that for bigger studios.
How's that company called?
It's called Nordcurrent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty big on mobile now. So when mobile came, they moved to mobile pretty successfully. Then other companies started using Unity back then, and Unity was very good on mobile. So quite a few new companies just started with mobile games at first. So the first 5 or 6 years on the rise of the industry, which was around 2010, 2012. So most of the companies were actually mobile game companies here, but now we have quite a few PC companies and console game companies, and as I mentioned, even AAA companies now. So I would say that the gaming industry is doing pretty good here.
Okay, cool. Talking a bit about you, when did you actually start developing games? Like in school back then?
Did start when I was still in school. So as I mentioned before, my brother and I, we started talking about making games and what skills we need. So he moved to programming pretty quickly, and he liked that. I started with art at first, at least more towards that direction. And I was looking for projects. I joined a couple of like smaller ones here, but then I found Broken Sword 2.5, which was a fan-made game somewhere in Germany. And I thought, well, there's internet, I can join that team remote, even though most of the team was actually remote even back then. And I joined that team, and maybe half a year or a year later, I became the art director of that game.
Wow. Okay, cool.
I was still probably in the 11th or 12th grade,
Oh, it's crazy. Okay.
but since it was a really young team and a lot of people that it was their first project, they just were really open to any people that showed initiative. And since I was at school, I had a lot of time on my hands. So I worked on that project. It was a really interesting experience and learned a lot. And one of the reasons that Broken Sword was one of the big influences to Crowns and Pawns, because we just wanted to use that experience that I gained there in our project as well. And I actually met our composer in that project as well. So the composer is Daniel Faros, and he's a German composer. He has won awards for point and click game music. He has written music for the Dalek games and some other games. So that was probably kind of a big breakthrough, not that much professionally, because it was a fan-made game. It was a non-commercial project. We didn't make any money for that game, but it was a really good learning experience, and we actually released it in 2008, and then released English voices in 2010. And then I moved to other things, and a couple of years later, we founded our own company.
What would you say worked really well in your life as a developer, and what maybe didn't?
As a game developer, and probably most of the people that work in this industry, the best thing is actually seeing your product out and seeing people enjoying it, and seeing people that like your creation. It's still a creative industry. It's not like super technical. It's not super mathematical. You never know if something that you do will be liked by other people. So when you actually finish something and release it and see that people enjoy it, I think that's probably the best thing that you can get from a creative industry. And for me as well, it's probably the most satisfying moment every time. One of the hardest things as a developer and as a game developer specifically is probably the process sometimes, because you start really, really fast. You prototype, you have something quite quickly usually, but then there's a few years of just grinding and adding new stuff, features, content, stuff like that. And at times it can get pretty difficult and tough, and but then you release it, and then the joy comes back, and then you want to make something new, and then you go through the same process again.
So that's a tag of joy.
So then you get the tag of joy for yourself, the tag of joy for everyone that played the game.
Is there a moment in your life in the games industry that you'll always remember?
I wouldn't name one thing. I can't remember any one thing, but I do remember many happy things. So again, releasing games before, releasing Crowns and Pawns just recently. I still remember when I joined Broken Sword 2.5, and I learned a lot there. And I remember drawing my first background for that game. It was, now it doesn't sound terrific or exceptional, but back then it was really exciting to see something that you made in a game like that.
What kind of background was it?
I think it was one of the backgrounds that we took from the first Broken Sword. So probably Hotel Ubu.
Yeah.
So we did redraw them because the first Broken Sword used 640 pixels in width and I think 420 in height, probably. And we did upscale the resolution to 800 in width and 600 in height. So we did have to redraw all the backgrounds for that.
Okay. Not bad.
So nowadays it sounds funny, but back then it was HD.
Yeah, crazy times. And it's actually not so long ago. So that's pretty amazing.
It is not so long ago, yeah. And actually, from the interesting and like happy moments as a developer, I love meeting other developers in events. I love meeting other indie developers. I love actually meeting industry veterans like Charles Cecil is, for example, a really nice guy. It's always fun to talk to him about projects, about the industry, or just about weather or anything. It's really nice that we are in contact with Bill Tiller, who is a really cool guy with like tens of years of experience, and it's nice that everyone in this industry is really down to earth, and you can talk to anybody, you can get some insights or just have fun with people like that. But as I mentioned, it's also really cool to meet developers of your own age or even younger to see what they're doing. And I guess I just love being in this industry. I love working in this industry. I love networking in this industry. I love I don't know, reading about this industry or playing games or making them. So I just like a lot of things about being a game developer.
Do you maybe have any advice for other indie developers who are maybe just starting out or working on their first project?
Probably the first thing that every developer has to learn is, even though you have to have fun in what you're making and like make games that you enjoy making, but you also always have to think about the player. You can't make a game just for yourself, like balance it for yourself and just try to make a game that you would love playing. You have to think about the people that, is there enough players that are going to play the game like that? Is it going to be not too easy or not too hard for the people that are going to play it? Are they gonna like the art style? Are they gonna like the story? Or if it's an action game, are they gonna enjoy what you do in that game? So I guess a lot of people start by making games for themselves, which is nice and a good learning experience. But at some point, you have to think about the players and try to make a game that as many people will enjoy as you can. But also, as I mentioned, at the same time, you have to think about what you enjoy making. So you have to balance those two things and enjoy the life of a developer.
So to sum up, Crowns and Pawns, Kingdom of Deceit, your new point-and-click adventure is out now for PC, consoles and mobile coming, mobile maybe.
Yes.
Are you happy how it turned out?
Really happy. A lot of people are giving us a lot of praise and a lot of positive feedback. Even the critics are really positive. We were really waiting for the adventuregamers.com review because that's the outlet that defines like makes or breaks your game. So they gave us 4 stars out of 5 and a really positive review.
Wow.
So that means that we made something good. So we are really happy about that. And there's quite a lot of players already playing it and hopefully will play in the future. So yes, happy.
Are you actually already working on the next project?
Yes. But Actually, we are still working on Crowns and Pawns a little bit. We still have to make 1 or 2 improvements in that game. So we will release a couple of updates there. We have 1 or 2 unannounced projects, but they're probably not going to be announced very soon. And we have another completely different project in the works that is more of an experimental project for us. It's in a different genre, but since we liked experimenting throughout the existence of the company, as I mentioned, we worked with augmented reality and with different genres, including even educational games, which are always a challenge because you have to kind of find the balance between interesting and informative. So we did have quite a lot of experience in different types of games, and that's why we are making that game as well, because it's an interesting new experiment for us. But we still love the narrative genre and adventures, and we will keep making them and hopefully announce something in the future. Not near future, probably, but I would say that 99% that we will release another adventure game in the future.
This other project, this experimental one, you can't tell us which genre yet?
It's actually already on Steam, so you can under the name of King of the Dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a management / simulation game where you dig dungeons, but the innovation is that you dig not in a flat world, like, for example, Dungeon Keeper, but you actually dig in a 3D world. So you can dig up and sideways and wherever you want. And that's probably the main challenge to the developers and to the players of that game. But it's quite early in development, but you can already find and wishlist it on Steam.
Okay, pretty cool. I'll check it out. Šarūnas, thanks so much for your time and for all these insights and to get to know a little bit more about Lithuania and your studio. And we wish you all the best, and thanks.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.